The thing about working a shitty job is that, and I don't care how moralistic anyone purports to be, after a while, people start to think they're owed more. Now, if you're like me, and you were once a barely 18-year-old high school dropout on the lowest part of the totem pole at a corporate pharmacy chain in Atlanta, that means stealing. A candy bar here, a soda there. If you're white in the South and you're looking for a job and no one else wants to do that job, well, you can pretty much get away with murder. It certainly didn't start out that way. Like most people, I remember getting that feeling of pure, incomparable joy and satisfaction when the boss told me I got the job. If anything, to be recognized as having potential is sometimes better than actually having it. But I was making $5.15 an hour, so that attitude didn't last very long. Then one day, they stuck me in the back to bust out those plastic interlocking colored crates filled with, well, everything. Need some hair gel, which I did in those days. I just wear those corduroy pants with the big deep pockets. They were very popular in the late 90s. Best friend needed some condoms? I got you, bruh. My girlfriend loved the Clinique perfume Happy, so what did I do? Stole about every bottle of perfume came through the back. You know, just for variety. I'd tell her I bought it. I never got caught, but had to quit the job just as summer was beginning to go visit my mom, who by this time had moved to Oceanside. While there, I found myself falling in love with Southern California. The whole affair was worthy of like one of those summer movie montages with all the cliched scenes. Sound of music type twirls down the beach, pensively staring at sunsets off the cliffs of Baja, and the piece de resistance, discovering the In-N-Out burger. Like any kid growing up in the South and raised by a Southern woman, I was total mama's boy. I'm still not sure how she tolerated such a brooding, sullen, and just generally disagreeable teenager for as long as she did in those summer months, but just as my relationship with California was entering that domesticated two-toothbrush phase, I was literally shoved onto a fucking Greyhound bus for the 3-day trip back to Atlanta. Finish high school and we'll talk about you moving out here, my mom said, a mix of relief and worry in her eyes. She should be worried, I thought as I looked around on the faces on the bus with me. Now, anyone who's taken a Greyhound bus ride for 3 hours, much less 3 days, can testify to the fact that it's not a cool experience. As Sam Jackson so eloquently put it, it's some fucked up, repugnant shit. I hadn't known suffering until I had to sit next to a chatty ex-con all the way through Texas. He may or may not have fallen out of the habit of wearing deodorant while he was in the pen. Sure, there's AC on these buses, but even when it's functioning correctly, the chemical smell of the refrigerant vapor combines, or more accurately clashes, with the stench of 50-something degenerates, resulting in a mutant funk so foul and grotesque that all I wanted to do was roll down one of those permanently locked windows, for your safety and the safety of others, and stick my head out into the stifling, ungodly heat of the August desert. Or, just as the bus entered the eastern part of Texas, that deep south variety of air that's so thick and muggy, it feels as if it's pushing back against your face. When I got back to Atlanta, I had to move in with my dad and my stepmom in a little slice of shit sandwich called Douglasville, Georgia. Now, while Atlanta is one of the most progressive, beautiful cities in the world, get about, let's say, 30 miles out of the city, and that deep red political map they always show during elections suddenly makes a lot more sense. Straight up country shit, with boiled peanut stands on every corner, and F-350 trucks that I'm pretty sure come standard with anti-lock brakes, heated seats, a gun rack, and a Confederate flag decal. I'm not saying Douglasville was deliverance country. They did get a mall a few years later. But keep this in mind. The next burg over was called White City. Not sure how it got that name. With no car and all my friends in Atlanta, I found myself actually doing quite well in my second senior year in high school. Being carless also prevented me from getting my old job back in Atlanta, but the Douglasville store had just opened and was part of the pharmacy chain's slow descent into the South after having bought out another regional chain. I'll spare you the misguided Sherman's March analogies. The manager at the Douglasville store looked like what you'd get if you took the sperm of every one of those blue-collar comedy tour guys, put it in a test tube with Sarah Palin's eggs, shook it up, and hoped for the best. His name was Jesse. His mullet game was on point. He was a nice enough guy, and after I'd been there for about 6 months, he waddled up to me with a question. Hey, Seth, I know you're finna take your break, but let me talk to you right quick. Oh, shit, I thought to myself, putting my hands in those corduroy pants. He knows about those munchos the other day. Look, you've been doing a real good job here, and even though you have your ears pierced, Tracy in the pharmacy just quit, and I need someone to fill in for her while we find someone new. So yeah, how do you like to be the pharmacist technician? I was in shock. It's a trap, I thought. Visions of Admiral Akbar in handcuffs in my head. Play it casual, Seth. No way this good old boy is onto you. Don't you need a license to do that? Some kind of school? Boy, don't worry about that, he said, accent as thick as sausage gravy. This is a promotion for you. Do a good job, and I'll see about getting you paid more. And that is how I became Douglas County's leading supplier of illegal pharmaceuticals. It didn't take long working back in the pharmacy to realize that blasé attitude extended to all departments. And since I had also worked in the other store in Atlanta, I was beginning to think the entire corporation just didn't give a fuck. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about how many bottles of pills I took while I was there, but I'll just say it was enough to where I went from being called a weird semi-goth faggot at school to being one of the most popular. Every clique had their favorites. Jocks were all about those painkillers, while the do-goody valedictorian types couldn't snort those Ritalins fast enough. The real goths, they wanted Xanny bars and Valiums, while the rednecks would just take about anything you had on you. I managed to become so notable that I even scored a date with a particularly popular girl. Turns out she was the stepdaughter of none other than redneck wrestler Stone Cold Steve Austin. I'd like to say I saved my money to buy things that I really needed, but I was far too busy buying the things that mattered. Velvet Underground CD box sets, Pete's Wicked L. Steiner glasses, and the quintessential 20th century high school dealer items. The matching pager and the cellular phone. Got a good deal on both. Only 50 cents a minute for that phone. Oh, and an extra pair of the deep-pocketed corduroys, as the original pair was beginning to show some wear and tear. The first Breaking Bad type scare I had was when a kid passed out on the front lawn and his mom demanded to know where he got the drugs from. Suddenly, Biggie's 10 Crack Commandments made a lot more sense to me. Sometimes the cops were called, sometimes they weren't, and yet somehow the drugs had passed through enough middlemen that my name never came up. Or hell, maybe those kids just didn't even know my name. My stepmother even found my stash at one point, but I somehow managed to convince her that I had not, in fact, stolen them from work. I eventually stopped, not out of fear of getting caught, but simply because I had to quit the job to move to California. But the truth of the matter is that I just didn't have the sensibilities needed to be a drug dealer. I was getting bogged down in those intangible what-if hypotheticals. You know, what if I sold that gothy kid some Ritalin and he struggles with addiction to this day? What if I sold that Golden Boy football player some Vicodin and he took too many, overslept, and ended up losing his scholarship? Or what if, and this is the one that gets me, I sold that creepy soon-to-be frat boy some Xanax and he didn't split it amongst his friends on prom night like he said he was going to? What if he gave it to his girlfriend? What if she didn't know what she was taking? What if she woke up with him on top of her and didn't have the strength to fight him off? On my last day at the pharmacy, good old boy Jesse came waddling over to the pharmacy looking particularly high on himself. He just scored a new manager job at the Family Dollar store and was particularly complimentary that day. Seth? Seth, you've done a real good job here and I'm gonna miss you. If you ever come back to Douglasville, you just look me up. There'll be a job for you wherever I am. A tinge of guilt took hold of me. Sure, this guy was a redneck, but he loved me. He believed in me. He saw my potential. And I'd been stealing from him for nearly a year. The compulsion to confess was just percolating when he added, "Us white folk got to stick together." These blacks from Atlanta all moving out here, so pretty soon guys like you and me will be the minorities. That's why we got to stick together. I wanted to throw up my arms and walk out of the store right then and there, 2 middle fingers up on the way out and kicking one of those stupid red plastic crates across the aisle and into some insufferable customer. But I didn't. I just kind of looked at him, nodded, and went back to counting pills. As he walked away, I looked down at my pants, corduroy with very big pockets.
So glad to have him on our stage. That's Seth Combs.